Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, The Foundation. Warren Castaneda stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the Seattle skyline blur through the rain-streaked windows. At 38, he had built Meridian Security Solutions from nothing into a thriving private security consultancy. His steel-gray eyes reflected the same intensity that had carried him through 12 years of military service before he traded his uniform for three-piece suits. The framed photo on his mahogany desk showed his wife Candace and their 8-year-old daughter Grace at last summer's vacation in Cabo. Candace's auburn hair caught the Mexican sun, her green eyes sparkling with what Warren had believed was genuine happiness. Grace, their miracle child born after years of fertility struggles, beamed between them with gap-toothed innocence. Warren's phone buzzed. "Mr. Castaneda, your 3 o'clock is here," announced his assistant. "Send him in, Janet." Julian Wilcox entered with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. Tall, broad-shouldered, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that women found irresistible, Julian had been Warren's client for 8 months. His shipping company, Pacific Crown Maritime, needed discreet security consulting for their high-value cargo routes. "Warren, my friend." Julian's handshake was firm, his cologne expensive. "I trust business is booming." "Can't complain." Warren gestured to the leather chairs. "The monthly security audit reports are ready. Your drivers have been following protocols perfectly." Julian accepted the folder, but didn't open it. "Actually, I wanted to discuss expanding our contract. Perhaps over dinner? I could bring Melissa. You and Candace could join us." Warren noted the slight hesitation before Julian mentioned his supposed girlfriend. In his line of work, Warren had developed an acute sense for detecting lies. Something felt off, but he filed it away. "Candace has been busy with her real estate work lately, but I'll run it by her. She's quite the saleswoman, for what I hear. Top performer at Highland Realty 3 years running." Julian's smile seemed forced. "You're a lucky man, Warren." The meeting concluded with handshakes and promises to connect soon. As Julian left, Warren couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted in their professional relationship. The way Julian had lingered on Candace's name, the studied casualness of his questions, it triggered the same instincts that had kept Warren alive in Afghanistan. That evening, Warren arrived home to their sprawling Bellevue house to find Candace in the kitchen, still wearing her burgundy power suit. She was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "No, not tonight. Warren will be home." She noticed him and quickly shifted her tone. "I'll call you back about the Henderson property tomorrow." Working late again, Warren loosened his tie. Candace's smile was bright, perhaps too bright. "You know how it is. The market's been crazy." She kissed his cheek, but it felt perfunctory. "Grace is already in bed. I told her you'd read to her tomorrow night." Warren climbed the stairs to Grace's room. His daughter was already asleep, her dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. She had Warren's determined chin and Candace's delicate features. He adjusted her blanket and whispered, "Daddy loves you, princess." Downstairs, Candace was already in their bedroom, claiming exhaustion. Warren sat in his home office, reviewing client files, but his mind kept drifting to Julian's odd behavior and Candace's evasive phone call. His military training had taught him to trust his gut, and right now, his gut was telling him something was very wrong. The foundation of his perfect life was about to crack. Chapter 2, Cracks in Paradise. 2 weeks later, Warren's suspicions crystallized into something darker. Candace's behavior had become increasingly erratic. Late nights that she blamed on difficult clients, hushed phone calls that ended abruptly when he entered the room, and a new distance in their intimacy that she attributed to stress. Warren had built his business on information gathering and threat assessment. It was time to apply those skills closer to home. He started small. Candace's laptop remained logged into her email when she rushed out for her emergency showing on Saturday morning. Warren found emails from Highland Realty, but also a concerning pattern of deleted messages. The trash folder had been emptied, but Warren knew how to recover deleted files, a skill learned during his intelligence work in the military. What he found made his blood run cold. Email fragments revealed plans for lunch meetings at the Four Seasons, intimate messages signed with initials JW, and most damning of all, a partially recovered message that read, "Warren suspects nothing. We can meet at the usual place tomorrow." Warren sat back in his leather chair, feeling like he'd been sucker punched. Julian Wilcox, his client, his supposed friend, the man who asked about expanding their business relationship while simultaneously destroying Warren's marriage. But Warren didn't react emotionally. Emotion was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not yet. Instead, he began a plan. The next phase of his investigation took him to the Four Seasons Hotel. A former Army buddy, Lewis Shields, now worked hotel security. One phone call, and Warren had access to security footage from the past 2 months. The videos were devastating. Candace and Julian, entering the hotel together multiple times, always during Warren's business hours. Their body language left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. In one particularly painful clip, Julian's hand was on the small of Candace's back as they walked toward the elevators. The same possessive gesture Warren used to guide his wife through crowds. Warren's hands clenched as he watched his marriage being dissected frame by frame. But beneath the pain was something else. A cold, calculating fury that his enemies in Afghanistan would have recognized. That evening, Grace asked why Mommy wasn't eating dinner with him anymore. "Mommy's working very hard, sweetheart," Warren said, cutting her mac and cheese into smaller pieces. "She wants to make sure we have everything we need." "But I need Mommy here," Grace said with the simple logic of a child. Warren's resolve hardened. Whatever Candace had done to him was one thing, but she was destroying their daughter's sense of security. That was unforgivable. Later that night, Warren confronted his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man staring back had the same steel-gray eyes, but something fundamental had changed. The Warren who had trusted blindly, who had built his life on the assumption of loyalty and love, was gone. In his place stood someone harder, someone who understood that the world was full of enemies. Some of them slept in your bed. Warren had always been methodical, but now he would be ruthless. He began planning not just to catch them, but to destroy them both so completely that they would spend the rest of their lives regretting the day they decided to betray him. Candace came home at midnight, claiming her client dinner ran late. She kissed Warren's forehead as he pretended to sleep, and he caught the faint scent of Julian's cologne on her clothes. Tomorrow, Warren would begin collecting evidence for what would become the most important mission of his life. Chapter 3. The Art of War. Warren's investigation entered its final phase with military precision. He installed tracking software on Candace's phone, the same surveillance tools he provided to corporate clients, and positioned microcameras in strategic locations around their home. Everything was legal under Washington state law, as he was recording activity in his own residence. The evidence mounted like artillery shells in a depot. Candace and Julian's affair had been going on for 6 months, coinciding exactly with when Julian had first hired Warren's company. The audacity of it was breathtaking. Julian had used Warren's own business as a cover to seduce his wife. But Warren discovered something else that made his blood boil. Candace wasn't just betraying him sexually. She was feeding Julian inside information about Warren's other clients. Security protocols, guard schedules, vulnerable points in corporate defenses. She had photographed documents from Warren's home office and forwarded them to Julian's private email. Warren realized he wasn't just dealing with adultery. He was looking at corporate espionage. Julian wasn't expanding their business relationship. He was planning to steal Warren's clients and destroy his company from within. The audio recordings were perhaps the most damaging. Hidden microphones captured Candace and Julian's conversations during their home visits, when they thought Warren was traveling for business. "He's so predictable." Candace's voice was cold, nothing like the warm woman who had said, "I love you" at their wedding altar 10 years ago. Warren thinks everyone operates with his stupid code of honor. He has no idea what we're doing. Soon we won't have to sneak around. Julian's voice was confident, arrogant. "Once I take his clients and you file for divorce, we'll have everything. His business, his house, his money. The prenup you signed won't matter if we can prove he was neglecting you emotionally." "What about Grace?" "Kids adapt." She'll get used to having a real father figure instead of Warren's military robot routine. Warren had to stop the recording. His hands were shaking not with fear, but with rage so pure it threatened to consume his rational mind. They weren't just destroying his marriage. They were planning to steal his daughter's respect for him. That night, Warren made a decision that would have horrified his younger self. He was going to destroy them both, and he was going to make sure they knew exactly who was responsible for their downfall. He started by setting up the final trap. Warren's company had a major contract presentation scheduled for the following week with a potential client worth $2 million annually. He leaked false information to Candace about the meeting's details, then waited to see if Julian would attempt to intercept the client. Meanwhile, Warren reached out to his network of former military contacts. His old squad leader, Cecil Harrison, now ran a private investigation firm in Los Angeles. Cecil owed Warren his life from their deployment in Kandahar, and Warren was ready to collect on that debt. "I need everything on Julian Wilcox," Warren told Cecil during their encrypted phone call. "Financial records, business dealings, personal history. If he's ever jaywalked, I want to know about it. How deep do you want me to dig?" "China deep. I'm going to war." "Cecil, I need ammunition." Cecil's report arrived 72 hours later. Julian Wilcox had built his shipping empire on a foundation of lies and strategic betrayals. He had destroyed 2 previous business partners through elaborate schemes, stolen clients from former employers, and left a trail of discarded mistresses. Most damning of all, Julian had a pattern. He specifically targeted married women whose husbands had valuable business connections. Candace wasn't Julian's first victim. She was just his latest mark. Warren sat in his home office, surrounded by evidence of the most comprehensive betrayal imaginable. His wife had sold out their marriage, their daughter, and his business for a man who saw her as nothing more than a useful tool. The old Warren might have simply filed for divorce and tried to rebuild. But that Warren was dead, killed by his wife's laughter when she described him as a military robot to her lover. The new Warren was going to teach them both that some betrayals came with a price that could never be fully paid. War was coming, and Warren Castaneda had never lost a battle. Chapter 4: Declaration of War. Warren's carefully laid trap snapped shut with beautiful precision. Julian had indeed attempted to steal the $2 million client, showing up at the corporate headquarters with a proposal that mysteriously contained Warren's exact security assessment strategies. The client, confused by the nearly identical presentations, called Warren immediately. "Mr. Castaneda, I think someone's trying to steal your work," the client CEO had said. "This Julian Wilcox character just pitched me your exact proposal, word for word." Warren feigned shock and gratitude, but inside, he was coldly satisfied. Julian had taken the bait perfectly, using the false information Warren had deliberately leaked through Candace. Now Warren had documented proof of corporate espionage that would destroy Julian both legally and professionally. But Warren wasn't ready to spring the final trap yet. He needed the perfect moment, the perfect audience, and the perfect setting to maximize the devastation. That moment came the following Friday evening. Candace announced she was attending a company retreat for the weekend at the Olympic Peninsula Resort. Warren's surveillance confirmed she was actually meeting Julian for a romantic getaway at the Salish Lodge. Warren told Candace he had to fly to Portland for an emergency client meeting, leaving Grace with Candace's mother, Marguerite Potts. Instead, he drove to Snoqualmie Falls and checked into the same resort under a false identity, a skill from his intelligence days that served him well in civilian life. He wasn't there to confront them. Not yet. Warren was there to document the final evidence he needed, video footage of their betrayal in its most intimate form. The lobby of the Salish Lodge was elegant, all stone fireplaces and Pacific Northwest luxury. Warren positioned himself with a clear view of the reception area, his professional-grade camera disguised as a simple messenger bag. Candace arrived first, wearing the red dress Warren had bought her for their anniversary. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. She checked in using a false name, Carla Draper, and Warren realized this wasn't their first romantic weekend at this location. Julian arrived 30 minutes later, and Warren captured every moment of their reunion. The passionate kiss in the lobby, Julian's hands on Candace's body, her face lighting up with the kind of joy Warren hadn't seen in months. But what happened next exceeded even Warren's expectations. As they headed toward the elevators, Julian pulled out his phone and made a call. Warren activated his directional microphone, another piece of surveillance equipment from his military days. "It's done," Julian said into the phone. "She's completely under my control now. Warren Castaneda won't know what hit him when we move to the final phase. You sure she'll follow through?" The voice on the other end was distorted, but Warren's enhanced audio equipment picked up enough for recognition. "Trust me, Candace would do anything for me now. She's already given me everything I need to destroy his business. Once the divorce is final and she gets half his assets, we'll have enough capital to expand Pacific Crown into direct competition with Meridian." Warren trained in the military, but he never learned how to fight a war on the home front. Warren's grip tightened on the camera. Julian wasn't just stealing his wife. He was using her as a weapon to destroy everything Warren had built. The conversation continued. "What about the kid? Grace? She's leverage. Candace will get custody because Warren travels so much for work. We'll make sure he has minimal visitation rights. The last thing we need is him influencing the girl against us." Warren's vision blurred with rage. They were planning to steal his daughter. He followed them discreetly to their suite, using his military training to remain invisible in the hotel's corridors. The room service cart abandoned in the hallway provided perfect cover for his final recording session. Through the partially open window, Warren captured audio of their post-sex conversation. Candace's voice was breathless but determined. "I've scheduled the meeting with the divorce attorney for Monday. My mother has agreed to testify that Warren was emotionally abusive, absent father, workaholic, couldn't handle Grace's needs." "Perfect." Julian's voice was satisfied. "And you're sure about the business documents?" "I've photographed everything. His client list, security protocols, financial records. When you launch Pacific Crown Security Services, you'll have everything you need to destroy Meridian within 6 months." Warren had heard enough. He packed his equipment and returned to his own room, where he spent the night creating multiple copies of the evidence. Digital files went to encrypted cloud storage. Physical copies went into safety deposit boxes at 3 different banks. By dawn, Warren had constructed an unassailable case that would destroy both Julian and Candace in multiple arenas: civil court for the divorce, criminal court for corporate espionage, and the court of public opinion for their spectacular betrayal. But Warren realized he wanted more than legal victory. He wanted them to experience the same helplessness and humiliation they had planned for him. He wanted them to understand what it felt like to have their lives systematically dismantled by someone they had underestimated. Warren Castaneda was about to teach his enemies that some wars aren't won in courtrooms. They're won by making your opponents destroy themselves. Chapter 5. The Perfect Storm. Warren returned home Sunday evening to find Candace already there, unpacking from her supposed company retreat. She greeted him with a kiss on the cheek and asked about his Portland meeting with the enthusiasm of an Oscar-worthy actress. "How did the client meeting go?" she asked, hanging up the red dress that now represented the death of their marriage. "Very productive," Warren replied, studying her face. "We might be expanding into maritime security consulting." He caught the micro-expression that crossed her features, a flash of interest quickly suppressed. Candace was already calculating how to feed this information to Julian. "That sounds promising," she said carefully. "New clients mean more travel, I suppose." "Actually, I'm thinking of scaling back on travel, spending more time at home with you and Grace." The disappointment in her eyes was unmistakable. Warren's increased presence would complicate her affair significantly. Monday morning brought the first phase of Warren's counterattack. While Candace met with her divorce attorney, Warren was implementing a strategy that would have made his military commanders proud. He started with Julian's business partnerships. Using his network of corporate security contacts, Warren began planting carefully crafted rumors about Pacific Crown Maritime's financial instability. Nothing actionable or libelous, just the kind of whispered concerns that made businesses nervous about long-term contracts. Simultaneously, Warren contacted every client on the list that Candace had photographed. He didn't accuse anyone of information theft. Instead, he simply recommended updated security protocols due to potential data breaches in the industry. The clients appreciated his proactive approach and signed extended contracts with enhanced confidentiality clauses, making it nearly impossible for Julian to steal them. But Warren's most devastating move involved Julian's family connections. Cecil Harrison's investigation had revealed that Julian's shipping company was partially financed by his wealthy father, Roderick Wilcox, a prominent Seattle businessman who valued family reputation above profit. Warren arranged a meeting with Roderick under the guise of discussing expanded security services for the Wilcox family's various business interests. The senior Wilcox was a man in his 70s with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to respect. "Mr. Castaneda, Julian speaks very highly of your company," Roderick said as they sat in his downtown Seattle office. "He suggested we might benefit from your security consulting." "Julian is a valued client," Warren replied carefully. "Though I should mention, we're currently investigating some irregularities in our client data security. Nothing that affects Julian directly, but corporate espionage is a growing concern in our industry." Warren placed a file on Roderick's desk. "As a precaution, I'm providing all our clients with examples of the kind of information theft we're seeing, just so you can protect your own business interests." The file contained carefully edited transcripts of conversations between Julian and Candace, with Candace's identity obscured, but Julian's corporate espionage plans clearly documented. Warren presented it as an example of typical corporate data theft patterns his company was combating. Roderick's face darkened as he read Julian's recorded words about destroying Warren's business and stealing his clients. "This Julian person in your example, he's using personal relationships to gain access to business intelligence. Unfortunately, it's more common than people realize." The target in this case was a married businessman whose wife was seduced specifically to gain access to confidential client information. "Despicable." Roderick's voice was ice cold. "A man who would use such tactics has no honor, no integrity. He's not worthy of business trust." Warren nodded gravely. "Exactly why we're working so hard to expose these schemes before they can do permanent damage." That afternoon, Julian received a phone call from his father demanding an immediate meeting. Warren's surveillance network, strategically placed contacts throughout the business community, confirmed that the meeting involved Julian's partial disinheritance and the immediate review of all Pacific Crown Maritime's financing arrangements. Meanwhile, Candace was experiencing her own complications. Warren had begun implementing subtle psychological pressure at home. He started asking pointed questions about her work schedule, expressing concern about her stress levels, and suggesting they needed to reconnect as a family. "I've been thinking about our marriage," Warren said over dinner Tuesday night, watching Grace color while Candace fidgeted with her phone. "Maybe we should plan a family vacation. Just the three of us, somewhere remote where we can focus on each other." Candace's smile was strained. "That sounds nice, but my work schedule is really packed right now. More packed than our marriage." Warren's tone was gentle, but his eyes were sharp. "I love you, Candace. I want to fight for what we have." The irony wasn't lost on him. Warren was declaring his intention to fight for their marriage, while simultaneously destroying the man who was stealing his wife. Candace's discomfort was visible as she struggled to respond appropriately to her husband's renewed attention. That night, Warren lay in bed listening to Candace's whispered phone conversation in the bathroom. She was panicking, telling Julian that Warren was becoming suspicious and possessive. Julian's responses, captured by Warren's hidden microphones, revealed a man whose confidence was beginning to crack under pressure. "My father is asking questions about my business practices," Julian admitted. "Someone's been feeding him information about corporate espionage. He's threatening to pull funding if he discovers any dishonorable behavior in my company." "What does that mean for us?" Candace's voice was strained. "It means we need to accelerate our timeline. File for divorce immediately. We can't wait any longer." Warren smiled in the darkness. They were reacting exactly as he had predicted, rushing toward decisions that would make them more vulnerable, not less. Tomorrow, Warren would implement the next phase of his plan, making them believe they were winning even as he tightened the noose around their necks. Chapter 6. The Honey Trap. Wednesday morning arrived with Candace's determination to end their marriage quickly. She scheduled an emergency appointment with her attorney and began gathering financial documents, exactly what Warren had anticipated. Her urgency was making her careless, and carelessness would be her downfall. Warren helped by providing easier access to the documents she sought. He accidentally left his office unlocked and made sure copies of financial records were visible on his desk. What Candace didn't realize was that Warren had prepared false financial statements showing Meridian Security Solutions deeply in debt and facing bankruptcy, the opposite of reality. "I think we need to talk tonight," Candace announced when Warren returned from work. "About our future." Warren nodded solemnly. "I've been thinking the same thing. But let's wait until Grace is asleep. This conversation is too important to rush." Candace agreed, but Warren could see her nervous energy. She was planning to blindside him with divorce papers, believing she held all the advantages. That evening, Warren received a text from Cecil Harrison. "Package delivered. Your friend Julian is about to have a very interesting day tomorrow." The package was the culmination of weeks of investigation into Julian's personal life. Cecil had discovered that Julian was already married to a woman named Christine Henderson who lived in Vancouver, Canada. Julian had been living a double life for 3 years, maintaining businesses and relationships in both countries. More importantly, Christine Henderson Wilcox was the daughter of a prominent Canadian shipping magnate who had provided significant financing for Julian's Seattle operations. She had no idea about Julian's affairs or his plans to steal clients from Warren's company. But Warren's masterstroke was yet to come. At 10 p.m., after Grace was asleep, Candace sat Warren down in their living room. She had clearly rehearsed her speech. "Warren, I haven't been happy for a long time," she began, her voice carefully modulated. "We've grown apart, and I think we need to face reality about our marriage." Warren listened with the expression of a man receiving devastating news for the first time. "What are you saying, Candace?" "I want a divorce." She handed him an envelope. "These are preliminary papers. I think it's best for everyone, especially Grace, if we handle this amicably." Warren opened the envelope with shaking hands, a performance worthy of its own award. The divorce papers were comprehensive, demanding half of all assets, primary custody of Grace, and substantial alimony. Candace had clearly spent months preparing for this moment. "I don't understand," Warren said, his voice breaking convincingly. "We can work through whatever problems we're having. We have Grace to think about." "Warren, please don't make this harder than it has to be." Candace's tone was cold, businesslike. "I've thought about this carefully. Our marriage is over." "Is there someone else?" Warren asked the question he already knew the answer to. Candace hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I've fallen in love with someone who can give me the life I deserve." Warren's performance shifted to barely contained rage. "Who is it?" "Someone I know." "That doesn't matter now." Candace stood up, moving toward the door. "I'm staying at my mother's tonight. My attorney will be in touch about the specifics." As she reached for her purse, Warren delivered his first real blow. "I'm leaving you for your boss. You can give me the life you only promised," Warren said quietly, quoting her exact words from a recorded conversation with Julian. Candace froze. "What did you say?" "Those were your words, weren't they?" "To Julian Wilcox, last Friday at the Salish Lodge." Warren's voice had shed all pretense of emotion. "Room 237, approximately 11:47 p.m., right after you told him how you were going to destroy my business and steal my daughter." The color drained from Candace's face. "Warren, I can explain." "Please, this will destroy our little daughter," Warren continued, quoting more of her recorded words. "Oh wait, that was my line, wasn't it?" From a script we're apparently following. Candace's hands were shaking now. "How long have you known?" Warren stood up slowly, his military bearing evident in every movement. "Long enough to document every aspect of your betrayal. The corporate espionage, the false financial claims you're planning to make, even your conspiracy to alienate Grace from me." "Warren, please. I already slept with him. It's done." Warren's voice was ice cold as he quoted her words back to her. "Remember saying that, Candace? About how there was no going back." Candace tried to speak, but Warren continued. "This is the biggest mistake of your life," Warren said, delivering the final line from the synopsis that had started this whole nightmare. "And tomorrow morning, you're going to understand exactly what that means." Warren walked to his home office and returned with a thick manila envelope. "Your boyfriend Julian is about to have some very interesting conversations with his wife Christine, his father Roderick, and several business partners who don't appreciate corporate espionage." Candace's eyes widened. "Wife? Oh, you didn't know Julian was already married? That you're just the latest in a long line of women he's used to steal from their husbands?" Warren's smile was predatory. "Christine Henderson Wilcox is flying down from Vancouver tomorrow morning. Apparently, she's very interested in meeting the woman who's been sleeping with her husband of 5 years. Warren handed Candace the envelope. "Inside, you'll find copies of everything. Every recorded conversation, every photograph, every document you stole from my office. Your attorney is going to have a very difficult time explaining how his client committed multiple felonies while planning her divorce." Candace opened the envelope with trembling hands. The evidence was overwhelming and irrefutable. "What I handed her wasn't a tissue," Warren said quietly, watching her face crumble as she realized the scope of his knowledge. "It was the end of the life she thought she was going to steal from me. The war wasn't over, but the first major battle had been won decisively. Warren Castaneda had just taught his enemies that betrayal was a game with consequences they couldn't imagine." Chapter 7. The Reckoning Begins. Thursday morning brought chaos to both Julian's and Candace's carefully constructed worlds. Warren watched the destruction unfold from his office, monitoring phone calls, tracking movements, and orchestrating the systematic collapse of his enemies' lives. Julian's day started with a confrontation from his wife Christine, who had flown down from Vancouver after receiving Warren's anonymous package of evidence. Warren's surveillance network confirmed that the meeting at Julian's downtown office was explosive, literally, as Christine threw Julian's laptop against the wall before storming out. Simultaneously, Roderick Wilcox arrived at Pacific Crown Maritime with his attorney and a forensic accountant. Julian's father had discovered that his son's business expansion was actually a plan to destroy Warren's company using stolen intelligence. Information that painted Julian as everything Roderick despised. But Warren's most devastating blow came through his network of former military contacts. Cecil Harrison had discovered that Julian's shipping routes were being investigated by federal authorities for customs violations. Nothing serious enough for criminal charges, but enough to trigger comprehensive audits that would tie up Julian's business for months. Warren had anonymously provided customs officials with suspicious activity reports based on Julian's own shipping schedules, which Candace had photographed from Warren's client files. Julian was being destroyed by his own stolen information. Meanwhile, Candace was discovering that her divorce attorney was suddenly unavailable. Warren had contacted the law firm's senior partners with concerns about potential ethics violations, specifically an attorney helping a client plan to steal corporate intelligence during divorce proceedings. The firm immediately placed Candace's case under review and suspended all legal action. Warren's phone rang at noon. Candace's voice was desperate. "Warren, we need to talk. Julian and we made a mistake." "You're certainly right about that," Warren replied calmly. "Where would you like to meet?" "At home. Can you come home for lunch?" Warren smiled coldly. They were already starting to beg. When Warren arrived at their Bellevue house, he found Candace pacing in the living room like a caged animal. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying, and her hands shook as she reached for her coffee cup. "Warren, I need to explain." "Nothing to explain," Warren interrupted, sitting in his favorite chair with the casual confidence of a man who held all the cards. "I understand the situation perfectly. You and Julian planned to destroy my business, steal my clients, alienate my daughter, and take half my assets. The execution was flawed, but the intent was clear. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Candace collapsed onto the couch. "Julian said you'd never find out. He said we could have everything we wanted. And what exactly did you want, Candace?" What was worth destroying our daughter's family? Candace's face crumpled. I wanted excitement. Adventure. Julian made me feel alive in ways you never did. Warren nodded as if this explained everything. So you decided to commit corporate espionage and conspiracy to defraud. Those are federal crimes, Candace. The FBI takes corporate intelligence theft very seriously. FBI. Candace's voice was barely a whisper. Julian's customs troubles are just the beginning. When federal investigators start looking into his business practices, they're going to find evidence of systematic intelligence theft. Your fingerprints are literally on the documents you photographed. Warren stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the life they had built together. But I'm not here to discuss your legal problems. I'm here to discuss Grace. What about Grace? Warren turned back to face his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife. You're going to disappear from her life voluntarily. I'm her mother. You're a criminal who used her own daughter as leverage in a corporate espionage scheme. Warren's voice was flat, emotionless. Any family court judge who sees the evidence will terminate your parental rights immediately. Candace began sobbing. Warren, please. I love Grace. I never meant for her to be hurt. But she will be hurt, won't she? When she's old enough to understand that her mother tried to steal her away from her father for money. When she realizes that everything you told her about Daddy being a workaholic was just preparation for your betrayal. Warren sat down across from Candace, his expression as cold as Arctic ice. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign revised divorce papers that give me full custody of Grace. You're going to forfeit any claim to alimony or asset division. And you're going to move far enough away that Grace won't accidentally encounter you until she's old enough to understand what kind of person her mother really is. And if I refuse? Warren opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Then I release everything to the FBI, the State Attorney General, and the Seattle Times. Julian's already facing financial ruin and federal investigation. Do you really want to join him in federal prison? Candace opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of federal criminal statutes relating to corporate espionage, conspiracy, and wire fraud. Warren had highlighted the sections about prison sentences, up to 10 years for first-time offenders. I had a different attorney prepare these new divorce papers, Warren continued, producing another document. Much simpler than the ones you try to serve me. I keep Grace, I keep my business, and you walk away with whatever personal assets you brought into the marriage. That's nothing, Candace whispered. That's more than you deserve, Warren replied. It's far more than you'll have if this goes to criminal court. Warren's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and smiled. The first genuine smile Candace had seen in weeks. Julian's father just fired him from Pacific Crown Maritime and initiated legal proceedings to recover family investments. Christine has filed for divorce in Canada and frozen all their joint assets. Federal customs agents are executing search warrants at Julian's offices as we speak. Warren stood up and adjusted his tie. Julian Wilcox went from millionaire shipping executive to unemployed federal suspect in about 6 hours. That's what happens when you underestimate your enemies. Candace was crying harder now, the magnitude of their miscalculation finally hitting her. What do you want me to do? Sign the papers. Pack your things. Be gone before Grace gets home from school. Warren's voice was final, unyielding. And Candace? If you ever try to contact my daughter without my permission, you'll discover that corporate espionage was the least serious crime I can prove you committed. Warren left his soon-to-be ex-wife sobbing in the living room and returned to his office. The destruction of his enemies was proceeding exactly as planned, but Warren wasn't finished yet. He had promised them complete ruin, and Warren Castaneda always kept his promises. Chapter 8. Scorched Earth. By Friday afternoon, Warren's revenge had achieved results beyond his most optimistic projections. Julian Wilcox's world had collapsed so completely that Warren almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The federal customs investigation had uncovered irregularities in Julian's shipping manifest dating back 2 years. While not criminal, the violations triggered massive fines and the suspension of Pacific Crown Maritime's international shipping licenses. Without those licenses, Julian's business was effectively dead. Christine Henderson Wilcox had proven to be as ruthless as her shipping magnate father. Canadian courts had frozen Julian's assets pending divorce proceedings, and her family's lawyers were pursuing criminal fraud charges for Julian's misrepresentation of his marital status in business contracts. But Warren's most satisfying victory was Roderick Wilcox's complete disownment of his son. The elder Wilcox had discovered not only Julian's corporate espionage plans, but also his pattern of using married women to gain access to their husband's business intelligence. For a man who prided himself on honor and integrity, Julian's behavior was unforgivable. Warren received the final confirmation Friday evening. Julian had been evicted from his downtown office space, his Mercedes had been repossessed, and he was living in a budget motel near the airport. Candace's destruction had been equally thorough, but more personal. She had signed Warren's divorce papers without reading them, a decision that would haunt her for years. The agreement granted Warren full custody of Grace, possession of all marital assets, and a restraining order that prohibited Candace from coming within 500 yards of their daughter without court supervision. Warren's attorney, Alan Thompson, had crafted the divorce settlement with surgical precision. She basically signed away everything, Alan explained during their Friday meeting. Full custody, the house, her retirement accounts, even her car since it was purchased with marital funds. Legally, she'll leave the marriage with less than she brought into it. And the criminal exposure? If she adheres to the divorce agreement and stays away from you and Grace, the corporate espionage evidence remains sealed. But if she violates any terms, Alan shrugged. Federal prosecutors love slam-dunk cases. That evening, Warren arrived home to find Candace's belongings gone and a note on the kitchen counter. Her handwriting was shaky, desperate. Warren, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to. But please don't poison Grace against me forever. I made terrible choices, but I do love her. Maybe someday, when she's older, you'll let her decide if she wants to know her mother. I'll be in Portland trying to rebuild my life. Candace. Warren crumpled the note and threw it away. Candace still didn't understand the magnitude of her betrayal. She thought this was about adultery and divorce, not realizing that she had committed crimes that could have destroyed Grace's future security. Grace came home from her grandmother's house that evening, and Warren had to explain why Mommy wouldn't be living with them anymore. Daddy, did Mommy do something bad? Grace asked with the intuitive wisdom of children. Warren knelt down to his daughter's level, looking into eyes that mirrored his own determination. Mommy made some choices that hurt our family. But you and I are going to be fine, Princess. We're going to take care of each other. Grace nodded solemnly. Will Mommy come back? I don't know, sweetheart. But no matter what happens, Daddy will always be here for you. That night, Warren tucked Grace in a bed and read her favorite story about a brave princess who saved her kingdom from dragons. As his daughter drifted off to sleep, Warren made a silent promise. Grace would grow up strong, independent, and incapable of being betrayed the way her father had been. Warren's phone buzzed with a text from Cecil Harrison. Julian's been arrested. DUI outside the motel. Looks like your boy is self-destructing faster than expected. Warren typed back. Natural consequences. Some people can't handle losing. But Warren wasn't finished. Julian and Candace's destruction was complete, but Warren had learned something important during this war. Betrayal was a disease that spread through weakness. He needed to ensure that Grace would never be vulnerable to the kind of manipulation her mother had fallen for. The next phase of Warren's plan involved building something positive from the ashes of his marriage. Grace needed to see strength, determination, and uncompromising integrity. She needed to understand that some people in the world were predators and others were protectors. Warren Castaneda intended to raise a protector. Chapter 9. Phoenix Rising. 6 months later, Warren stood in the same corner office where this nightmare had begun, but everything had changed. Meridian Security Solutions had doubled in size, acquiring 3 of Julian's former clients and expanding into maritime security consulting. Ironically, the same market Julian had tried to steal. Grace had adapted to their new life with the resilience of childhood. She thrived in her new private school, excelled in martial arts classes that Warren had enrolled her in, and showed an early aptitude for strategy games that reminded Warren of his own tactical mind. The restraining order had kept Candace away, but Warren knew she was struggling in Portland. His network of contacts reported that she was working as a waitress, living in a studio apartment, and had been rejected by several real estate firms when background checks revealed her involvement in corporate espionage. Julian's fall had been even more spectacular. The DUI arrest had led to a deeper investigation of his finances, revealing a pattern of tax evasion that resulted in federal charges. He was currently serving 18 months in federal prison and faced deportation proceedings initiated by his Canadian ex-wife's family. But Warren's greatest victory was personal. Grace had stopped asking about her mother and instead talked excitedly about their weekend camping trips, her progress in Taekwondo, and her plans to study business and law when she grew up. "I want to help people like Daddy does," she told Warren one evening over dinner. "Protect them from bad guys." Warren smiled, recognizing his own sense of justice in his daughter's words. "What kind of bad guys, Princess?" "The sneaky ones. The ones who pretend to be good but hurt people when they're not looking." Warren realized that Grace understood more about her mother's betrayal than he had given her credit for. Children were remarkable in their ability to sense deception, even when they couldn't articulate it. Warren's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed a number he recognized. Candace's cell phone. "Grace, go finish your homework," Warren said gently. "Daddy needs to take this call." Grace nodded and headed upstairs. Warren answered the phone. "Warren, please don't hang up." Candace's voice was different, broken, desperate. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but I need help." "You're right. You don't have the right." Warren's voice was cold, but not angry. Anger implied she still had the power to affect him emotionally. "I'm in trouble, Warren. Real trouble. Julian's people, they blame me for everything going wrong. They think I set them up." Warren was unsurprised. Criminal associates often turned on each other when plans collapsed. "That's not my problem, Candace. They know where I live. They've been following me. Warren, I think they're going to hurt me." For a moment, Warren felt the old protective instinct that had once made him love this woman. Then he remembered Grace's question about sneaky bad guys who pretend to be good but hurt people when they're not looking. "You should call the police," Warren said finally. "The police won't believe me. I have a record now because of the corporate espionage charges. Warren, please. I know I destroyed everything, but I don't want to die." Warren was quiet for a long moment. Candace was probably telling the truth about being in danger. Julian's business associates wouldn't appreciate their operations being exposed to federal investigation. "Where are you?" "Portland, at a diner on Southeast Hawthorne. I've been staying here because I'm afraid to go home." Warren made a decision that surprised even him. "There's a Greyhound station 3 blocks from where you are. Buy a ticket to Denver. When you get there, go to the address I'm about to text you. It's a women's shelter run by a friend of mine from the military. Tell them Warren Castaneda sent you." "Warren, that's all I'm going to do, Candace. You get one chance to disappear and start over somewhere safe. Don't waste it." Warren hung up and sent the address. Then he called his contact in Denver, Sergeant Marie Hyde, who ran a program helping women escape domestic violence. "Marie, I'm sending someone your way." Long story short, she made some terrible choices that put her in danger. She's not a good person, but she doesn't deserve to die for being stupid. Copy that, Warren. We'll take care of her. Warren hung up and walked upstairs to check on Grace's homework. His daughter was working on a math problem with the same focused intensity Warren brought to military operations. "All finished, Princess?" Grace looked up and smiled. "Almost. Daddy, why did you help the bad person on the phone?" Warren sat down beside his daughter, marveling again at her perception. Because sometimes protecting people means protecting them from themselves, even when they don't deserve it. "But she hurt us." "Yes, she did. And she'll live with the consequences of that for the rest of her life." "But Grace, you never let other people's bad choices turn you into someone you don't want to be." Grace nodded solemnly, as if filing away this lesson for future use. 3 days later, Warren received a text from Marie Hyde. "Your package arrived safely." She's in the program and seems committed to making better choices. Warren deleted the message and put his phone away. Candace Castaneda, now Candace Draper, since she had legally returned to her maiden name, was no longer his concern. She would rebuild her life, or she wouldn't, but either way, it would happen far from Grace. That evening, Warren and Grace sat on their deck overlooking Lake Sammamish, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and red. Grace was reading a book about female military leaders throughout history, a Christmas gift that had become her favorite. "Daddy," Grace said without looking up from her book, "when I grow up, I want to be like you." "What do you mean, princess?" "Strong. Someone who protects people and doesn't let bad guys win." Warren pulled his daughter closer, feeling a fierce pride that had nothing to do with revenge or victory. Grace was growing into exactly the kind of person the world needed. Someone who couldn't be broken by betrayal, who wouldn't compromise her principles for temporary pleasure, and who understood that strength came from protecting others rather than destroying them. "You're already like that, Grace. You've always been strong." As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, Warren reflected on the events that had changed their lives. Candace and Julian had thought they were playing a game where everyone could win if they were clever enough. They had never understood that Warren was in Castaneda, the man who had served 3 tours in Afghanistan, who had built a business on the principle that trust must be earned and betrayal must be punished, was playing an entirely different game. Warren had won not by becoming like his enemies, but by being exactly who he had always been, a protector who never forgot that some wars were worth fighting, and some victories were worth any price. Grace fell asleep against his shoulder as the night settled around them. Warren carried his daughter inside and tucked her into bed, whispering the same promise he made every night. "Daddy will always keep you safe, princess. Always." In the end, Warren Castaneda had lost a wife, but gained something far more valuable: the absolute certainty that he would never again be betrayed by someone he trusted completely. Grace would grow up knowing that some people in the world were predators, some were victims, and some were guardians. Warren intended to make sure his daughter never forgot which one she was meant to be. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Foundation of Deception. Vincent Calloway stood in his corner office on the 42nd floor, watching the city sprawl beneath him like a chessboard. At 52, he had built Calloway Enterprises from nothing, a construction empire that had reshaped half the metropolitan skyline. His hands, scarred from his early days swinging hammers and pouring concrete, now signed contracts worth millions. Those same hands had also built what he thought was a perfect marriage. 25 years ago, he'd met Claire Sutton at a charity gala. She was a psychology graduate student then, beautiful and sharp-minded, volunteering for a mental health nonprofit. Vincent was immediately captivated by her intelligence and the way she could read people like open books. She seemed to see straight through his rough exterior to the ambitious man beneath. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Vincent was climbing the ladder of success, working 18-hour days, but Claire never complained. She supported his dreams, even when it meant eating ramen for months while he invested every penny into his first major project. When his business finally took off, Vincent made sure Claire never wanted for anything again. Bradley Calloway, Vincent's younger brother, had always been the family disappointment. Where Vincent was disciplined and driven, Bradley was charming but reckless. He'd burned through 3 marriages, countless jobs, and most of his inheritance from their parents. Vincent had bailed him out more times than he could count, always hoping his brother would finally straighten out. 6 months ago, Vincent had made what he now realized was his biggest mistake. He'd given Bradley a job as project coordinator at Calloway Enterprises. Claire had actually suggested it during one of their dinner conversations. "Maybe having real responsibility will change him," she'd said, her hand touching Vincent's arm gently. "Family is everything, Vince. Give him another chance." Vincent should have trusted his instincts. Bradley had been a mediocre employee at best, but Claire had continued to advocate for him, always finding excuses for his poor performance. Vincent had attributed her sympathy to her psychology background. She always believed people could change. Now, as Vincent prepared to leave the office for their anniversary dinner, he felt a strange unease. For weeks, Claire had been different, distant, secretive, taking calls in other rooms. When he questioned her about it, she blamed stress from planning their anniversary celebration. "I want a night to be perfect," she'd said that morning, kissing his cheek before he left for work. "I have a surprise that will change everything." Vincent straightened his tie and grabbed his keys. In a few hours, they'd be at Moretti's, the same restaurant where he'd proposed 26 years ago. Claire had insisted on the same private dining room, the same menu they'd shared that magical night. As he walked to his car, Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Bradley. "Looking forward to tonight, brother. Time for truth." Vincent frowned. Bradley wasn't supposed to be at dinner. It was just the two of them. He started to call his brother, then decided against it. Maybe Bradley was just referring to some family gathering later in the weekend. But something in that message felt ominous. Vincent drove through the city streets, passing construction sites bearing his company's logo. Each project represented years of sacrifice, strategic planning, and ruthless execution. He learned early that success required crushing weakness in himself and others. It was a lesson that had served him well in business. He had no idea he was about to learn how well it would serve him in life. Chapter 2. The Perfect Storm. Moretti's hadn't changed in 26 years. The same dim lighting, the same burgundy wallpaper, the same elderly maitre d' who remembered Vincent's proposal and always greeted them with knowing smiles. Tonight, Giuseppe led them to their private dining room with extra flourish. 25 years, the old man said in his thick accent. Molto bello. Very beautiful. Claire looked stunning in a black dress Vincent had never seen before. Her auburn hair was styled differently, more sophisticated, and she wore new jewelry that caught the candlelight. She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her purse, and checking her phone repeatedly. "You look incredible," Vincent said, pulling out her chair. "New dress. I wanted tonight to be special." Claire's smile seemed forced. "We've come so far, haven't we?" They ordered the same meal from 26 years ago. Osso buco for him, salmon for her. Vincent tried to recreate the romance of their early days, sharing memories of their wedding, their struggles, their triumphs. But Claire seemed distracted, her responses mechanical. "Remember when we lived in that tiny apartment above the deli?" Vincent laughed. "You said the smell of salami would be our fortune cookie. It would tell us when we'd made it in life." "Things change," Claire said quietly. "People change." Vincent studied his wife's face. As a businessman, he learned to read micro-expressions, to catch the tells that revealed when someone was lying or hiding something. Claire was definitely hiding something. "Are you all right? You've seemed distant lately." Claire's hand went to her purse again. "Actually, Vincent, I need to tell you something. I have a surprise." She pulled out a small wrapped box, placing it on the table between them. Vincent felt a moment of confusion. They'd never exchanged gifts on their anniversary. That had always been a tradition they'd saved for birthdays and Christmas. "Open it," Claire said, her voice strange, almost cold. Vincent unwrapped the box slowly. Inside, beneath tissue paper, were official legal documents. His eyes scanned the header. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Divorce papers. But that wasn't the worst part. Beneath the papers was a photograph. Claire and Bradley, clearly intimate, kissing outside what looked like a hotel. The timestamp showed it was taken just 3 days ago. Vincent's blood turned to ice. The restaurant's sounds faded to a distant hum. He looked up at Claire, who was no longer pretending to be nervous. Her expression had transformed into something he'd never seen before. Cold, calculating, almost predatory. "We've been waiting for this moment for a long time," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. 25 years was long enough to play the perfect wife. The private dining room door opened, and Bradley walked in, wearing a suit Vincent had bought him last Christmas. His brother's face wore the same cold expression as Claire's. "Surprised, big brother?" Bradley sat down uninvited. Took you long enough to figure it out. Vincent's mind raced. Questions flooded his thoughts, but one stood out above the rest. How long had this been going on? How long? He asked, his voice deadly quiet. Claire and Bradley exchanged a look, and Claire smiled, a cruel expression Vincent had never seen on her face before. Since the beginning, she said. Since before we were married. The words hit Vincent like a physical blow. 25 years. Their entire marriage had been a lie. You see, Vince, Bradley continued, Claire and I met first. At that charity gala. But you were the one with the money, the ambition. I was just a college dropout with no prospects. So we made a plan, Claire added. I'd marry you, help build your empire, and when the time was right, we'd take our share and disappear. Vincent's hands clenched into fists under the table. His mind, trained by decades of business warfare, began to shift from shock to something much more dangerous. You want a divorce, he said calmly. Fine, but you won't get a penny. Bradley laughed. Actually, brother, Claire's been very smart about this. Illinois is a no-fault state, and she's entitled to half of everything you've built, including the company. Our lawyers have been preparing for months, Claire added. We have documentation of our contributions to your success, evidence of assets, everything we need. Vincent stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. Both Claire and Bradley tensed, perhaps remembering that Vincent had learned to fight long before he'd learned to negotiate. But Vincent simply reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and made a call. Antonio, it's Vincent. I need you at Moretti's. Private dining room. Now. He hung up and looked at his wife and brother with an expression that made both of them suddenly uncomfortable. You want to play games? Vincent said quietly. You have no idea who you're playing with. Chapter 3. The Call to War. Antonio Ricci arrived within the hour, his presence filling the private dining room like a storm cloud. Vincent's lawyer for the past 15 years, Antonio was known throughout the legal community as a man who didn't just win cases. He obliterated opponents. Tall and silver-haired, with the bearing of a general, he commanded respect from judges and fear from opposing counsel. Claire and Bradley had grown visibly uncomfortable during the wait. Vincent had said nothing, simply sitting in silence, his mind working through possibilities and contingencies. They'd clearly expected tears, begging, perhaps rage. Instead, they got calculated stillness. Vincent, Antonio said, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. I came as soon as I could. Sit down, old friend. My wife has something she'd like to share with you. Claire's confidence had begun to crack. She slid the divorce papers across the table to Antonio, who reviewed them with professional detachment. His eyebrows raised slightly as he read. Interesting, Antonio murmured. Very aggressive terms. And filed in Cook County, I see. He looked up at Claire. Who's your attorney, Mrs. Calloway? Wilson, Park and Associates, Claire replied, trying to maintain her composure. Antonio smiled, an expression that had made many lawyers rethink their career choices. Ah, yes. Marcus Wilson. Good lawyer. Not great, but good. He turned to Vincent. This is recoverable. Is it? Vincent asked quietly. Of course. Prenuptial agreement, business protections, asset structures we put in place years ago. Mrs. Calloway might get some settlement, but nothing like what she's hoping for. Claire's face flushed. The prenup was signed under duress. I was young, naive. You were 28 with a master's degree in psychology. Antonio interrupted. That's not going to fly. Bradley leaned forward. You don't understand. We have evidence. Of what? Antonio's voice was steel. An affair? Illinois is no fault. Adultery doesn't affect division of assets unless there's economic waste, which you'd have to prove. Vincent watched his wife and brother's confidence crumble as Antonio dismantled their plan piece by piece. But this was just the beginning. They'd shown their hand, revealed their true nature. Now it was time to show them his. Antonio, Vincent said calmly, I want you to do something for me. First thing tomorrow morning, I want Bradley removed from the company. Security escort, the works. And I want a forensic accountant to examine every transaction he's had access to. Vincent, Bradley said, sweat beading on his forehead, you can't just... Can't what? Fire an employee for cause? This is my company, Bradley. I built it. I own it. Vincent's voice never rose above conversational level, which made it somehow more terrifying. And I want to know exactly what you've been doing with company resources. Claire grabbed Bradley's hand. We haven't stolen anything. Haven't you? Vincent stood up slowly. Company credit cards, expense accounts, business trips. I'm going to examine every charge, every receipt, every hotel room. He paused, including the hotel where this photo was taken. The implication was clear. If they'd used company resources for their affair, it constituted theft and breach of fiduciary duty. This is harassment, Claire said, but her voice lacked conviction. Vincent pulled out his phone again and made another call. Detective Morrison? Vincent Calloway. I need to file a report tomorrow morning. Suspected embezzlement and fraud. Yes, I'll have documentation. He hung up and looked at the two people who had just destroyed his world. You wanted to play hardball. Let's play. Antonio gathered the divorce papers. I'll have a response filed by the end of the week. In the meantime, Vincent, you might want to consider securing your assets. Already done, Vincent replied. As of this morning, the house, the cars, the bank accounts, everything is locked down pending investigation. Claire stood up suddenly. You can't do that. I live there too. Read your prenup again, Claire. Infidelity voids your claim to marital residence. Vincent's smile was razor thin. You and Bradley are welcome to find a hotel. I'm sure you know some good ones. As they prepared to leave, Vincent called out one last time. Oh, and Claire, that psychology degree, you're going to need it. Because by the time I'm finished with you both, you're going to understand exactly what happens when you try to destroy Vincent Calloway. The door closed behind them, leaving Vincent alone with Antonio. How bad is it really? Vincent asked. Legally, you'll be fine. She'll get something, but nowhere near half. The prenup is solid. Antonio paused. But Vincent, if you're planning what I think you're planning, be careful. Don't let anger make you do something stupid. Vincent walked to the window, looking out at the city he'd helped build. Antonio, you've known me for 15 years. Have you ever seen me do anything stupid? No, but I've never seen you betrayed like this either. Vincent turned back to his lawyer, and Antonio saw something in his eyes that made him step back. It wasn't anger. It was something much more dangerous. It was the cold, calculating fury of a man who had built an empire through ruthless precision and was now going to apply those same skills to destroying the people who had betrayed him. Don't worry about me doing anything stupid, Vincent said quietly. Worry about what happens when I do everything smart. Chapter 4. Gathering Intelligence. Vincent spent the next morning in his office, making calls and pulling threads. By noon, he had assembled a team that would have made a military intelligence unit envious. 3 private investigators, a forensic accountant, a computer security specialist, and a team of lawyers who specialized in high-conflict divorce cases. The first revelation came within hours. Mr. Calloway, said Diana Frost, the lead private investigator, we've traced the affair back at least 3 years based on hotel records and credit card receipts. But there's more. She slid a folder across his desk. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and communication records that painted a picture of betrayal far worse than Vincent had imagined. Your brother has been skimming from project accounts for 2 years. Small amounts, never enough to trigger audits, but it adds up to about $80,000. Vincent's jaw tightened. And Claire. She's been planning this divorce for at least 18 months. We found communications with her lawyer dating back that far. There are also records of her moving money into private accounts, jewelry purchases she's hidden, even a safety deposit box she opened without your knowledge. The computer specialist, a young woman named Riley Chun, looked up from her laptop. Their electronic communications are extensive. Text messages, emails, even recorded phone calls. They've been incredibly detailed about their plans. Show me. Riley turned her laptop screen toward Vincent. The messages between Claire and Bradley were damning. Not just proof of the affair, but evidence of calculated planning to maximize the divorce settlement and minimize Vincent's ability to fight back. One message from Claire to Bradley stood out. V is so predictable. He thinks everyone plays by his rules. When we're done, he'll understand that being honorable is just being weak. Vincent read through months of messages, each one a knife twist. They mocked his devotion, laughed about his long work hours, even joked about how easy it was to manipulate him. But then Vincent found something that changed everything. Riley, what's this message thread from 8 months ago? Riley clicked on the folder. It looks like they were discussing someone else. Look at the contact name, insurance policy. The messages revealed a third conspirator, Claire's sister, Denise, who worked as a paralegal at a major law firm. She had been feeding Claire insider information about high-profile divorces, helping her plan strategies to maximize her settlement. This is conspiracy, Vincent said quietly. They've been planning this for years, using inside legal information to build their case. Diana nodded. It gets worse. We found evidence that Denise has been doing this with other clients. Your wife wasn't her first victim. Vincent stood up and walked to his window. The city spread out below him, and he could see several construction sites bearing his company's logo. Each one represented years of careful planning, strategic thinking, and precise execution. Now he would apply those same skills to war. Diana, I want you to expand the investigation. I want to know everything about all 3 of them. Financial records, personal relationships, vulnerabilities, fears, everything. Mr. Calloway, Diana said carefully, what exactly are you planning? Vincent turned back to his team. They think they know me. They think I'm just a hardworking businessman who plays by the rules. They're about to learn that I didn't build this empire by being nice. His phone rang. It was Antonio. Vincent, we have a problem. Claire's attorney filed an emergency motion for temporary support and exclusive use of the marital residence. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Let them come, Vincent said. By tomorrow morning, I'll have everything I need. After hanging up, Vincent made one more call to a number he hadn't used in 15 years, but had never forgotten. Tommy? It's Vincent Calloway. Yes, it's been a long time. I need a favor. The kind we used to do back in the neighborhood before I got respectable. The voice on the other end was gravelly, amused. Vinny, what kind of trouble you got yourself into? The kind that requires someone to forget how to be a gentleman. Well, shit. I thought you'd gone all corporate on us. What do you need? Vincent looked at the files spread across his desk. Evidence of years of betrayal and manipulation. I need to remind some people that successful doesn't mean soft. Consider done. Just like old times. As Vincent hung up, he realized that for the first time in days, he was smiling. Claire and Bradley thought they were dealing with a wealthy businessman bound by social conventions and legal niceties. They were about to meet the man who had crawled out of a Chicago slum and built an empire by being smarter, tougher, and more ruthless than anyone who tried to stand in his way. The war was just beginning. Chapter 5, The First Strike. The emergency hearing convened at 9 a.m. sharp in Judge Patricia Henley's courtroom. Claire sat with her attorney, Marcus Wilson, looking confident and composed. She wore a conservative navy suit that projected the image of a wronged wife seeking justice. Vincent sat with Antonio, appearing calm and professional. But inside, he was a loaded weapon waiting to fire. Judge Henley reviewed the motion. Mrs. Calloway is seeking temporary spousal support of $15,000 per month and exclusive use of the marital residence during these proceedings. Mr. Wilson, present your case. Wilson stood up, painted a picture of Claire as a devoted wife who had sacrificed her career to support her husband's success. Your Honor, Mrs. Calloway has been married for 25 years. She gave up her career in psychology to support Mr. Calloway's business endeavors. She's entitled to maintain the standard of living she's accustomed to, and the exclusive use of the residence. Judge Henley asked, Mrs. Calloway fears for her safety, Your Honor. Mr. Calloway has a history of violent behavior and has made threats. Vincent's eyes narrowed. This was a lie, and a dangerous one. Mr. Ricci? Judge Henley looked to Antonio. Antonio stood with predatory grace. Your Honor, if I may. He activated a laptop, and a screen descended from the ceiling. The plaintiff has made serious allegations about my client's character. I'd like to address those first. The screen lit up with a series of photographs. Vincent at charity events, receiving community service awards, coaching Little League Baseball for underprivileged kids. The images painted a picture of a man deeply involved in community service and philanthropy. "This is the man Mrs. Calloway claims she fears," Antonio said. "A man who has donated millions to charity, who personally mentored over 50 at-risk youth, who has never been arrested, never been charged with any crime, never even had a parking ticket." Wilson objected. "Character evidence isn't relevant to the motion at hand." "Oh, but it is," Antonio continued smoothly, "because Mrs. Calloway's attorney just made character the central issue by claiming she fears for her safety." The screen changed to show a timeline. "Now, let's discuss why Mrs. Calloway might really want exclusive use of the residence." The new images showed bank records, jewelry receipts, and storage unit rental agreements. Over the past 18 months, Mrs. Calloway has been systematically removing assets from the marital home. Jewelry, artwork, personal items, all moved to a private storage facility she rented under her maiden name. Claire's face went pale. Wilson started to stand, but Antonio wasn't finished. "She's also been moving money, Your Honor. Small amounts, never enough to trigger automatic notifications, but totaling over $200,000 moved to accounts in her name only." The screen showed a flowchart of financial transactions. Judge Henley leaned forward, studying the documents. "Furthermore," Antonio continued, "Mrs. Calloway has not been honest about the timeline of these proceedings. She claims this is a recent decision, but we have evidence that she's been planning this divorce for over 18 months. Wilson finally found his voice. "Your Honor, these allegations are supported by documentary evidence," Antonio interrupted, "including communications between Mrs. Calloway and her attorney dating back to August of last year." Judge Henley looked at Wilson sharply. "Counselor, did you begin representing Mrs. Calloway 18 months ago?" Wilson's silence was damning. "But the most relevant issue," Antonio said, "is why Mrs. Calloway really wants exclusive use of the residence." The screen changed again, showing hotel receipts and credit card statements. "Mrs. Calloway has been conducting an extramarital affair with Mr. Calloway's brother, Bradley Calloway, using marital assets to fund their relationship." The courtroom erupted. Claire grabbed Wilson's arm, whispering frantically. Vincent watched his wife's composure finally crack. "Your Honor," Antonio said over the noise, "Mrs. Calloway doesn't want the house for safety. She wants it because she and her lover have been using it for their affair, and she believes she can claim it as an asset in the divorce." Judge Henley banged her gavel. "Order." She looked at Wilson. "Counselor, do you have a response to these allegations?" Wilson stood slowly. Vincent could see the man realizing his client had lied to him about crucial facts. "Your Honor, we need time to review these documents and prepare a response." "I'll bet you do," Judge Henley said dryly. She turned to Antonio. "Mr. Ricci, what is your client seeking?" "Simply this, Your Honor, that the status quo be maintained pending a full investigation. Mr. Calloway will continue to live in the marital residence. Mrs. Calloway is welcome to return, but if she chooses not to, she can make other arrangements. As for support, we believe the evidence shows Mrs. Calloway has been preparing for this eventuality for months and has adequate resources." Judge Henley reviewed her notes. "Motion for exclusive use of residence is denied. Motion for temporary support is denied, pending a full accounting of assets and a proper investigation. Mrs. Calloway, I strongly suggest you and your attorney have a very honest conversation about the facts of this case." As the court adjourned, Claire turned to Vincent with fury in her eyes. "You bastard," she hissed. "You think you've won?" Vincent stood up slowly, buttoning his suit jacket. "Claire, this wasn't winning. This was just me being polite." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You have no idea what losing looks like yet." Outside the courthouse, Vincent's phone buzzed with a text from Diana Frost. "Package delivered. Phase 2 is ready." Vincent smiled as he watched Claire and Wilson hurry away, probably to figure out how much their case had just fallen apart. They thought the courtroom was the battlefield. They were about to learn that Vincent Calloway fought wars on multiple fronts. Chapter 6: The Web Titans. That evening, Claire arrived at the small apartment she'd rented under her maiden name to find Bradley pacing frantically. The space was a far cry from the luxury they'd both grown accustomed to, a cramped two-bedroom in a complex that had seen better decades. "Did you see the news?" Bradley asked without preamble. Claire dropped her purse and stared at him. "What news?" Bradley pointed to his laptop, where a local business publication's website was displayed. The headline read, "Callaway Enterprises employee arrested for embezzlement." Claire's blood went cold as she read the article. Bradley had been arrested that afternoon and charged with multiple counts of fraud and embezzlement. The article detailed how a routine internal audit had uncovered systematic theft of company funds over a 2-year period. "They arrested me at the office," Bradley said, his voice shaking. "In front of everyone. Security escort, handcuffs, the whole thing. How is that possible? We were careful. Vincent's smarter than we thought. He had forensic accountants go through every transaction I've ever made. Every dinner, every hotel room, every gift I bought you, if it was paid for with company money, they found it." Claire sank into a chair, the magnitude of their situation beginning to hit her. "What did your lawyer say?" "That's the worst part." "My lawyer? The one from Wilson's firm? He can't represent me anymore. Conflict of interest, since the firm is representing you in the divorce. So get another lawyer." "With what money?" Bradley's voice rose. "They've frozen all my accounts pending investigation. Every penny I have access to is company money they're claiming I stole." Claire's phone rang. The caller ID showed her sister's number. "Denise?" "Thank God." "Claire, we need to talk." "Now." "Are you alone?" "I'm with Bradley." "Put me on speaker." Claire hit the speaker button, and Denise's voice filled the small apartment, tight with panic. "They know about me," Denise said without preamble. "Vincent's people. They know I've been feeding you information." "How is that possible?" "They have our communications, Claire. All of them. Text messages, emails, even recorded phone calls. They know about the other cases, too. They found out I've been doing this with other clients." Bradley slumped against the wall. "Jesus Christ." "It gets worse," Denise continued. "They've reported me to the state bar. I'm probably going to be disbarred. And my firm? They fired me this afternoon." Claire felt the walls closing in. "Denise, you need to—" "I need to what? Run? Hide? They have everything, Claire. Every document I copied, every strategy one shared, every law I broke helping you." Her voice cracked. "I'm probably going to prison." The line went dead. Claire and Bradley stared at each other in the sudden silence. Everything was falling apart faster than they could process. Bradley's phone buzzed with a text message. He looked at it and went pale. "What is it?" Claire asked. "It's from Vincent." Bradley read aloud. "Check your email." Bradley opened his laptop and accessed his personal email. The message from Vincent was simple. "Click the link." Against his better judgment, Bradley clicked. A video began playing, security camera footage from various hotels, restaurants, and even the Callaway Enterprises office. It showed Bradley and Claire together in clearly intimate situations over the past 3 years. Dates, times, and locations were meticulously documented. But the worst part was the audio. Conversations they'd had, mocking Vincent, discussing their plans, laughing about how easy he was to manipulate. "He's been recording everything," Claire whispered. "For years." The video ended with a simple message. "This is what justice looks like. You played a game with a man who built an empire. Did you really think you could win?" Bradley's phone rang. Vincent's name appeared on the screen. "Answer it," Claire said. Bradley put the phone on speaker. "Vincent, hello, brother." Vincent's voice was calm, almost conversational. "I thought you might want to know what happens next." "Vincent, please." "Bradley, you stole from my company. That's a felony. Multiple felonies. Actually, you're looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. I'll pay it back." "With what money?" "You don't have any money. You never did. Everything you've had for the past 2 years has been stolen from me." Claire grabbed the phone. "Vincent, we can work this out." "Can we, Claire? You've been lying to me for 25 years. You've stolen from our marriage, betrayed our vows, and conspired with my brother to destroy everything I've built." His voice never changed tone, which made it somehow more terrifying. "What exactly do you think we can work out?" "The divorce." The divorce is going to be very simple. You're going to get exactly what you're legally entitled to under our prenuptial agreement, which, thanks to your infidelity and the evidence of your systematic deception, is almost nothing. Bradley, try one more time. Vincent, we're family. No, Bradley. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't spend years planning to destroy each other. There was a pause. You want to know what family does? Family protects itself from people like you. The call ended. Claire and Bradley sat in stunned silence as the reality of their situation sank in. They had tried to outmaneuver a man who had spent 30 years building an empire through strategic thinking and ruthless execution. And they were losing. Badly. Chapter 7. The Hammer Falls. 3 weeks later, Claire sat in Marcus Wilson's office, watching her lawyer review documents with increasingly grim expressions. The confident attorney who had assured her of a substantial settlement now looked like a man who'd been hit by a truck. Claire, I'm going to be very direct with you, Wilson said. Your case has collapsed entirely. What do you mean collapsed? Wilson spread documents across his desk. The evidence Vincent's team has compiled is devastating. Not only do they have proof of your affair, but they've documented systematic deception going back to the beginning of your marriage. He pointed to a thick folder. They found the original correspondence between you and Bradley from before your wedding. Love letters, Claire. You were planning to marry Vincent for his money while continuing your relationship with his brother. Claire's face went white. She'd forgotten about those letters, stored in an old box in her mother's attic. They also have bank records showing you've been moving money for over 2 years, hidden jewelry purchases, even a safe deposit box you opened in another state. Wilson's voice was flat. And then there's the conspiracy with your sister. Denise is facing criminal charges, Wilson continued. She's cooperating with prosecutors to avoid prison time. That means she's going to testify about everything, every strategy she gave you, every law she broke to help you. Claire slumped in her chair. What does this mean for the divorce? Under your prenuptial agreement, infidelity voids most of your claims to marital property. Combined with the evidence of deception and theft, you're looking at a settlement of maybe $50,000, enough to start over, but nowhere near the millions you were hoping for. That's impossible. I gave him 25 years of my life. You gave him 25 years of lies, Wilson interrupted. Claire, I've been practicing family law for 20 years. I've never seen a case this thoroughly documented. Vincent's team has evidence of everything, every lie, every deception, every moment of betrayal. Wilson's phone rang. He answered it briefly, then hung up with a grim expression. That was the prosecutor's office. They want to meet with you tomorrow. Why? Because you're being charged as an accessory in Bradley's embezzlement case. Using stolen company funds to conduct an affair makes you a co-conspirator. Claire felt the world spinning around her. This is insane. Vincent can't destroy my entire life over an affair. He's not destroying your life over an affair, Wilson said quietly. He's destroying your life over 25 years of systematic fraud, deception, and theft. The affair was just the trigger that made him look deeper. Meanwhile, across town, Bradley Calloway sat in a much smaller office with a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Calloway, the evidence against you is overwhelming, the lawyer said. We're talking about documented theft of over $80,000, using company credit cards for personal expenses, falsifying expense reports. The list goes on. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Bradley said. Vincent always had everything. I just wanted my share. Your share wasn't yours to take. And the prosecutor isn't just looking at the money. They're treating this as part of a larger conspiracy involving your affair with your brother's wife. Bradley's head snapped up. What? They're arguing that the embezzlement was part of a larger scheme to defraud your brother, including your affair with his wife using stolen funds. That elevates this from simple theft to organized conspiracy. How much time am I looking at? If convicted on all counts, 7 to 12 years. Bradley felt his world collapse completely. 7 to 12 years in prison for what had started as just taking what he felt he deserved. There is one option, the lawyer continued. The prosecutor is willing to consider a plea deal if you cooperate fully. Provide testimony about the entire conspiracy, including your sister-in-law's involvement. You want me to testify against Claire? I want you to consider that she's probably going to testify against you to save herself. This isn't about loyalty anymore, Mr. Calloway. It's about survival. That evening, Vincent stood in his office, looking out at the city skyline. Diana Frost sat across from his desk, providing the day's updates. Both of them are cracking, Diana reported. Claire's lawyer is pushing for a quick settlement, and Bradley's public defender is talking plea deal. And Denise, fully cooperating. She'll testify about the entire conspiracy in exchange for probation instead of prison time. Vincent nodded. Everything was proceeding exactly as he'd planned. But the real satisfaction wasn't in their legal troubles. It was in watching them turn on each other. Any word from Claire? She's been trying to reach you all week. Calls, texts, even showed up at the office yesterday. What does she want? To talk. To work something out. She's desperate. Vincent smiled, a cold expression that would have made his enemies shiver. Let her be desperate a little longer. Desperation makes people show their true nature. His phone buzzed with a text from Claire. Vincent, please. We need to talk. I can explain everything. Vincent deleted the message without responding. Claire had spent 25 years deceiving him. Now she would learn what it felt like to be powerless, to have her entire world controlled by someone else's decisions. The game was almost over, and Vincent had won every round. Chapter 8, The Final Gambit. Claire's desperation had reached a breaking point. After 3 weeks of watching her life disintegrate, she made a decision that would prove to be her final mistake. She drove to Vincent's office building and waited in the parking garage until she saw his car arrive. As Vincent walked toward the elevator, Claire stepped out from behind a concrete pillar. Vincent, please. Just 5 minutes. Vincent stopped and studied his wife of 25 years. She looked haggard, her expensive clothes wrinkled, her makeup imperfect. For a moment, he almost felt pity. Almost. 5 minutes, he said. They rode the elevator to his office in silence. Once inside, Claire turned to him with tears in her eyes. Tears Vincent now knew were likely as calculated as everything else about her. Vincent, I know you hate me. I know you think I'm a monster. But we had good times, didn't we? 25 years can't all have been a lie. Vincent walked to his desk, but didn't sit down. Which part wasn't a lie, Claire? The wedding vows you made while planning to continue your affair with my brother? The nights you held me while texting him? The times you said you loved me while stealing my money? Not everything was planned. I did love you in my own way. Your own way. Vincent's voice was quietly dangerous. Your own way involved 25 years of systematic deception. Your own way involved conspiracy and theft. Your own way involved mocking me behind my back with my own brother. Claire tried a different approach. What about forgiveness? What about mercy? You used to believe in second chances. I gave Bradley second chances, third chances, fourth chances. I gave him a job, money, a life. And you both used my generosity to plot against me. We can start over. You and me. Without Bradley. I'll sign any agreement you want, take any settlement. We can rebuild. Vincent finally sat down behind his desk. Claire, do you know what the difference is between a wise man and a fool? Claire shook her head. A wise man learns from his mistakes. A fool makes the same mistake twice. Vincent's eyes were cold. I would have to be the greatest fool in history to trust you again. Claire's facade finally cracked completely. You bastard. You self-righteous son of a bitch. You think you're so perfect? You think you never made mistakes. I made one mistake, Vincent said quietly. I trusted you. I gave you the best years of my life. You gave me 25 years of lies. There's a difference. Claire's desperation turned to rage. You want to destroy me? Fine. But you'll never have what we had. You'll never trust anyone again. You'll die alone, you miserable. Get out. The quiet words cut through Claire's tirade like a blade. Vincent's voice hadn't risen, but there was something in it that made Claire step back. Vincent, get out of my office. Get out of my building. And if you ever try to contact me again outside of legal proceedings, I'll have you arrested for harassment. Claire stood frozen for a moment, then grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Vincent sat alone in his office for several minutes, then picked up his phone and called Diana Frost. She just left. Did you get it? Every word, Diana replied. The recording is crystal clear. Her threats, her admission that the good times were calculated, all of it. And Bradley, he just signed a plea agreement. Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll testify against both Claire and Denise. Vincent nodded. The last pieces were falling into place. That evening, Claire returned to her apartment to find Bradley waiting for her, looking defeated. They offer me a deal, he said without preamble. What kind of deal? 7 years if I cooperate. 12 to 15 if I don't. Claire stared at him. Cooperate how? Testify. About everything. The affair, the planning, your sister's involvement, all of it. You can't. We're in this together. Are we? Bradley's voice was bitter. Because according to my lawyer, you've been trying to make your own deal for weeks. Claire's silence was damning. I'm taking the deal, Claire. 7 years is better than 15. You're going to testify against me? You were going to testify against me. Bradley exploded. Don't pretend this is about loyalty. We both know you'd throw me under the bus in a heartbeat if it saved you. They stared at each other, and in that moment, both realized that their conspiracy had been built on the same foundation as their affair. Mutual selfishness rather than any real connection. Vincent was right about one thing, Bradley said quietly. We never loved each other. We just hated him having what we wanted. The next morning, Vincent received a call from Antonio with the news he'd been expecting. Claire's attorney just called. She wants to accept the settlement offer. All of it. Every term. $50,000. No claim to the house or business. No spousal support. She's also agreed to plead guilty to conspiracy charges in exchange for probation. Vincent hung up and walked to his window. In 6 months, it would all be over. Claire would be out of his life forever. Bradley would be in prison, and Denise would be disbarred and facing her own legal consequences. But as Vincent looked out at the city he'd helped build, he realized the victory felt different than he'd expected. Not hollow. He had no regrets about destroying people who had tried to destroy him, but it was tinged with a sadness he hadn't anticipated. 25 years of his life had been a lie. That was the part that truly hurt. Not the betrayal itself, but the realization that he'd never really known the woman he'd slept beside for a quarter century. But Vincent Calloway had not built an empire by dwelling on disappointments. He'd built it by learning from mistakes and moving forward. And he had learned. He'd learned that trust was a luxury he could no longer afford. He'd learned that mercy was often mistaken for weakness. And he'd learned that sometimes the people closest to you were the ones most capable of destroying you. Those were lessons he would never forget. Chapter 9. Empire's End. 6 months later, Vincent stood in the same courtroom where this had all begun, watching Judge Henley finalize the divorce decree. Claire sat at the defendant's table, wearing a simple black dress that looked like it came from a discount store. The transformation was complete, from the elegant woman who had once commanded rooms to someone broken and defeated. The court hereby grants the dissolution of marriage between Vincent Calloway and Claire Sutton Calloway, Judge Henley announced. All terms of the settlement agreement are hereby ratified. It was over. 25 years reduced to a legal document and a $50,000 check. As the courtroom emptied, Claire approached Vincent one last time. Her lawyer tried to stop her, but she waved him away. Vincent, she said quietly. He turned to face her, noting how much she'd aged in the past 6 months. The stress of legal proceedings, financial ruin, and public humiliation had taken their toll. I just wanted to say, she began, then stopped, seeming to realize there was nothing left to say. Goodbye, Claire, Vincent said simply. She nodded and walked away. Vincent watched her leave, then turned to Antonio. That's it. She's out of your life, forever. Outside the courthouse, Diana Frost was waiting with a final report. Bradley was sentenced this morning, she said. 7 years, just as the plea agreement specified. He'll be eligible for parole in 5. And Denise, disbarred and 2 years probation. She'll never practice law again. Vincent nodded. Justice had been served completely and thoroughly. What about Claire's plans? She's leaving Chicago. Apparently, She has a cousin in Oregon who offered her a job as a secretary. It's quite a come down from being the wife of Vincent Calloway. Vincent felt no satisfaction in that information. The woman who had left the courthouse wasn't the same person he'd married 25 years ago. Or maybe she was, and he'd simply never seen her clearly. Diana, I want you to keep tabs on all three of them. Quarterly reports. I want to know if any of them ever try to contact me, write about me, or mention my name in any public forum. You think they'll try something? I think desperate people do desperate things. And I believe in being prepared. That evening, Vincent sat in his study at home, a house that felt both familiar and entirely different without Claire's presence. He'd had the locks changed, the security system upgraded, and her belongings removed. It was his space again, but it felt somehow hollow. His phone rang. The caller ID showed the name Tommy Benedetto, the man from his old neighborhood he'd called months ago. Vinny? It's Tommy. Just wanted to check in, see how things went. It's over, Tommy. All of it. Good. Any loose ends need tying up? Vincent considered the question. There were always loose ends, people who might cause problems in the future, opportunities for revenge that hadn't been fully explored. But sometimes enough was enough. No, they're finished. That's sufficient. You sure? Because if you ever need anything, I'm sure. But Tommy, thank you for being ready. Anytime, Vinny. That's what family's for. Real family, Vincent thought as he hung up. Not the kind that betrays you, but the kind that stands ready to help when the world turns against you. Over the following months, Vincent threw himself back into his business with renewed focus. Callaway Enterprises expanded into new markets, acquired smaller competitors, and landed several major government contracts. Vincent's reputation in the business community, far from being damaged by the divorce scandal, seemed enhanced by his decisive handling of it. But the personal cost was real. Vincent found himself unable to trust easily, suspicious of motives, constantly analyzing people for signs of deception. He dated occasionally, but never seriously, always wondering what agenda lay behind every smile, every laugh, every expression of interest. 1 year after the divorce was finalized, Vincent received an unexpected visitor. Antonio called ahead to warn him. Vincent, there's someone here to see you. Someone from your past. Who? Father Miguel Rodriguez. He says he knew you growing up. Vincent smiled for the first time in weeks. Father Miguel had been the priest at his childhood parish, the man who'd taught him that strength without moral purpose was just brutality. Send him up. Father Miguel looked older, but still carried himself with a quiet dignity Vincent remembered. They embraced, and Vincent felt something he hadn't experienced in months, a sense of genuine connection with another human being. Vincent, my boy, I heard about your troubles. Not troubles, Father. Education. The old priest smiled. Ah, still the proud one. Some things don't change. They talked for hours about the old neighborhood, about Vincent's success, about the choices that led to this moment. I'm concerned about you, Vincent, Father Miguel said finally. Not about your business or your money. About your soul. My soul is fine, Father. Is it? Tell me, what have you gained from your revenge? Vincent considered the question carefully. Justice. Protection. The certainty that no one will try to destroy me again. And what have you lost? Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Trust. The ability to believe in people. Maybe the ability to love. Those are expensive prices to pay for justice. They're necessary prices to pay for survival. Father Miguel leaned forward. Vincent, I baptized you. I watched you grow up in streets where trust could get you killed. But I also watched you become something more than your environment. Don't let 3 people's betrayal turn you back in what you fought to leave behind. And what was that? A man who trusts no one, loves nothing, and dies alone. After Father Miguel left, Vincent sat in his office thinking about those words. He'd achieved everything he'd set out to achieve. His enemies were defeated, his empire was secure, his reputation was intact. But as he looked out at the city lights, Vincent realized that Father Miguel was right about one thing. He was alone in a way he'd never been before. Not just physically alone, but emotionally isolated in a fortress of his own construction. The question was whether that fortress was protection or a prison. Vincent Calloway had destroyed everyone who betrayed him. He'd proven that crossing him carried a price too high for anyone to pay. He'd secured his empire and his future. But in the quiet of his empty house, surrounded by the success he'd fought so hard to protect, Vincent had to wonder if winning had been worth what it cost. The war was over. Vincent had won completely and utterly. But victory, he was learning, could be its own kind of defeat. Epilogue. 5 years later, Vincent Calloway stood at the ground